The unexpected news. Amara sat in the cramped bathroom of her two-bedroom apartment, the faint hum of the ceiling fan doing little to steady the storm inside her chest. Her heart thudded against her ribs as if it were trying to escape. The cheap white tiles reflected the dim yellow light above, and on the sink, a single object waited, a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. They glared back at her, bold and undeniable, like a judgment she hadn't prepared for. Her throat felt dry. She pressed both palms against her thighs, staring at the tiny stick as though it might change if she looked long enough. She had been nauseous for days, blaming it on stress, skipped meals, or maybe the greasy roadside food she sometimes ate when work kept her late. But deep down, somewhere beneath the excuses, she had known. Now the truth stood before her in unrelenting silence. Her mind raced back to that night at the club. The music had been deafening, the lights low and hazy. She had danced too much, drunk too much, laughed too much. Anything to drown out the fatigue of her endless routine. Then there was him, a stranger with an easy smile and hands that lingered longer than they should have. She barely remembered his name now. One reckless night, a mistake wrapped in the haze of alcohol and loneliness. Afterward, he had promised to call. He hadn't. His number was always busy, sometimes switched off. Eventually, he stopped picking up altogether, leaving her with nothing but unanswered calls and a memory she wished she could erase. But he wasn't the only possibility. There was Say, her quiet, consistent toaster. He had been around for months. Not flashy, not rich, not the type of man people boasted about to friends. He was still hustling to keep his small printing business alive. No car, no big house, no status. But he was dependable. He checked on her almost every day, brought food when he could, and always asked how she was really doing. And one night, when loneliness pressed too hard and his kindness felt like the only safe place in the world, she had let him into her bed. Now, staring at those 2 pink lines, she realized she had no idea whose child she was carrying. The confession. For 2 days, Amara walked around with the secret burning inside her chest. She went to work, smiled at colleagues, and answered phone calls as though everything was fine, but inside she felt like she was walking on shaky ground. Every time her stomach turned, she pressed a hand to her middle, whispering, "Not now, please." Finally, she decided to tell Say. They met at a small roadside restaurant, the kind with plastic chairs, a dusty floor, and the scent of grilled suya wafting through the air. She could barely taste the meat in front of her. Her appetite had long vanished. She twisted the edge of her napkin, her mind rehearsing and unrehearsing the words she had to say. "I'm pregnant," she said finally, her voice low, her eyes fixed on the scarred wooden table. Say froze. His hand, halfway to his mouth with a bottle of Coke, stopped in the air. Slowly, he set it down. His face went blank. Not angry, not surprised, just unreadable. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the sizzling sounds from the suya man outside. Then he leaned back in his chair with a long sigh. "Amara," he began, his voice steady but heavy, "I won't lie to you. Things are hard for me right now. I don't even have my life fully together yet." He paused, looking her in the eye, his expression softening. "But I'm not the type to run. If this child is mine, I'll take responsibility. Maybe not all at once, but I'll be there. Just don't end the pregnancy." Amara blinked rapidly, tears stinging her eyes. She hadn't expected acceptance. She had braced for anger, for rejection, maybe even for him to walk away. Instead, here he was, simple, honest, scared but standing with her. That night, lying in bed, Amara replayed his words over and over again. The ceiling fan spun slowly above her, rattling with every turn, but she hardly noticed. She pressed her hand to her belly, not yet rounded but no longer hers alone. She didn't know if it was bravery, desperation, or simply hope that drove her, but she made her choice. She would keep the baby. The following months tested her resolve. Her body grew heavier, her energy thinner, and every day seemed like a balancing act. She worked as much as she could, sometimes pushing herself beyond reason, her growing belly making even simple tasks feel like mountains. Sei showed up often. Sometimes he brought roasted corn wrapped in paper. Sometimes he carried her bag when her back ached. Sometimes he just sat with her in silence. His presence sang more than words. He didn't have much money, but whatever little he had, he shared. The man from the club remained a ghost. Amara eventually stopped trying to reach him. He was nothing more than a shadow in her past, and she refused to let that shadow darken her child's future. The first time the baby kicked, she sat upright in bed, pressing both hands to her belly, tears flooding her eyes. "We'll be okay," she whispered to the unseen life inside her. "Mama's working for you." And she meant it. The invitation. By her 8th month, her body was round, her steps slower, but her determination unbroken. One quiet evening, as they sat on her small balcony, watching the orange sun sink below the rooftops, Sei cleared his throat. "Amara," he began, sounding nervous. "I know we're not married, and maybe people will talk, but I think you should move in with me, at least for now. It'll be easier to raise the child together." Amara turned to look at him. His eyes were steady but anxious, his hands fiddling with the edge of his chair. His apartment wasn't much, a small one-bedroom in a modest neighborhood. But she could see it in his face. His offer was genuine. "You're sure?" she asked softly. He nodded. "We'll manage with the little we have." Her heart softened. For the first time in weeks, she let herself lean against him, her head resting on his shoulder. The birth. When the labor pains came, it was Sei who rushed her to the hospital in the dead of night. He borrowed a car from a neighbor, his hands trembling so badly on the wheel that he missed a turn. Amara screamed through contractions, clutching the dashboard. Hours later, as dawn broke, Amara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The sound of his first cry filled the room like music, and Sei's eyes brimmed with tears. He gripped Amara's hand tightly, whispering, "We did it. He's here." They named him Tamawa. Enough for me to rejoice. A simple kind of happy. Life after Tamawa's birth was far from perfect. Their apartment, already small, felt even tighter with baby clothes strung across makeshift lines, bottles stacked in corners, and Tamawa's cries echoing through sleepless nights. But the joy of watching him grow outshone the struggles. Sei often woke in the middle of the night, peering into the crib just to check if Tamawa was breathing. His big hands fumbled clumsily as he tried to soothe the baby, sometimes patting too hard, sometimes too gently, until Amara laughed through her exhaustion. Amara herself learned the delicate balance of work and motherhood, answering emails with one hand while rocking Tamawa with the other, typing reports while he slept across her lap. Some nights, when he finally drifted off, she would collapse beside him, whispering prayers of gratitude. In the evenings, after long days, Amara and Sei often sat on the floor, Tamawa sleeping peacefully between them. They would talk about dreams, fears, and the uncertain road ahead. They didn't have much, but they had each other. For now, that was enough. New blessings. Tamawa's first year brought blessings neither of them had anticipated. Sei's small printing business, once struggling to pay rent, took an unexpected turn. A bulk order from a private school changed everything: uniforms, books, and promotional materials. That one job opened doors to referrals, and soon he was supplying schools all over their area. Amara, too, rose at work. After handling a major case that brought in a wealthy client, she earned a promotion. Her boss trusted her enough to let her manage side projects, and she seized every opportunity. By Tamawa's 2nd birthday, their combined income covered rent, bills, and even left room for savings. They moved into a modest but neat 2-bedroom apartment, furnished it with care, and for the first time since they met, they no longer had to count coins before making decisions. The unanswered question. Still, Sei hadn't proposed. It wasn't that he didn't love Amara. He did deeply. But for him, marriage was more than a ring and a certificate. It was a lifelong covenant. He had watched his own father rush into marriage, only to live in regret and bitterness for decades. Sei refused to repeat that mistake. In quiet moments, he told himself, "I'm still studying her. Money changes people. Let me see her when she's comfortable. The change in her. And slowly he did see the change. First it was small. Amara began to dress better, her hair and nails always perfectly done. She attended more work events, more social gatherings, always with her head held high. Sei admired her confidence. He liked seeing her shine. But then came the tone. Don't worry, Sei, you won't understand. This is corporate stuff. Or, you don't have to come. It's not really your kind of crowd. She began making decisions about the house without asking him. When he raised an eyebrow, she would brush it off with, I'm the one paying for it anyway. First, Sei kept calm. He told himself it was just a phase, an adjustment to her new lifestyle. He swallowed his words, choosing silence over confrontation, especially with Tomoe watching. But deep down, he felt something shifting. But it continued. Weeks turned into months, and the sharp edges of Amara's tongue only grew sharper. What had started as little dismissive comments, the kind one could brush off with a laugh, turned into open comparisons. Do you see how Tund takes his wife everywhere? Even business dinners, she said one evening while scrolling through Instagram. That's the kind of man who understands partnership. Not every man knows that. Sei had been mending a broken chair leg in the sitting room. He heard the words, let them land, but said nothing. Another time, after she returned from a work event, she threw her clutch on the table and sighed. Honestly, Sei, sometimes I just wish you could hold a conversation with people at my level. You're good with printing, yes, but corporate talk is different. Please, just stick to your hustle and leave the rest. The words stung, but Sei only nodded. He had promised himself he would watch, learn, and decide. He loved her, yes, but deep in his chest, something was shifting. The question was no longer, should I marry her? It had become, is this even the woman I want to marry at all? The constant clash. It got to a point where it seemed Sei could do nothing right. If he came home early, she would wrinkle her nose and ask, you closed already? Are you even hustling hard enough? How will we grow like this? If he came home late, she would be waiting at the door with folded arms, her voice sharp. Where have you been? Which woman kept you this long? Do you think I'm stupid? At first, he tried to explain, patience in his tone. Amara, I was meeting a client. I was at the shop, sorting an order. But the more he explained, the less she believed him. Her questions were no longer questions. They were accusations. Even the smallest things became sparks for argument. If he left his shoes near the couch instead of by the door, she sighed loudly. If he folded laundry in a way she didn't like, she would redo it in front of him, muttering, you can't even do small things right. Even how he played with Tomoe became a point of attack. If he laughed too loudly while texting a friend, she would snap, keep those silly jokes for your girlfriends. Sei swallowed it all. Day after day, he pushed his hurt deeper inside, telling himself, be patient. Watch her. Learn. The final straw. One evening, after a punishing day of back-to-back deliveries for his business, Sei returned home with aching muscles and dust on his shirt. He barely had time to drop his bag by the door before Amara started. So you've started keeping late nights again? Don't think I don't know what you're doing. You think I don't see the way you smile at that girl who works in the shop next to yours? Sei rubbed his forehead, fatigue weighing him down.
Amare, I'm tired.
Please, not tonight. But she didn't stop. Her voice grew louder, sharper, cutting into him with every word. She accused him of being irresponsible, of wasting her time, of not being man enough to make her his wife after all these years. Something inside him snapped that night. He looked at her, the woman he had once thought he could build forever with, and realized he no longer recognized her. When she paused to catch her breath, he spoke, his voice calm but heavy with finality. Amara, I can't do this anymore. I've tried. I've been patient. But this isn't love anymore. I won't fight with you every day. I won't let our son grow up thinking this is how two people should live together. She scoffed, folding her arms. So you're running away? Go ahead. That's why you'll never be man enough for me. His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Silence was his last shield. The morning after, Before dawn broke, Sei rose quietly. He packed a small suitcase, just clothes and a few personal belongings.
No fas, no drama.
He walked to Tamawa's bed and stood there for a long moment. The boy's tiny chest rose and fell peacefully, his face soft in sleep. Sei bent down, brushed a hand over his hair, and whispered, "I'll always be here for you, champ. Even if I'm not in this house, I'm still your dad." By the time Amara stirred awake, the house was emptier. On the dining table, a note lay waiting. "I can't live like this anymore. I'll support our son, but I need my peace." Sei's new life. Leaving felt like breathing for the first time in months. The constant tension, the sharp words, the suspicion. All of it faded behind him. He rented a modest self-contained apartment close to his printing shop. It wasn't much, but it was his, and it was peaceful. With the weight of a toxic home gone, his mind grew clearer. He threw himself into work, networking with schools, churches, and small businesses. Within months, he landed 2 major contracts. One with a church for banners and bulletins, another with a school for uniforms and exercise books. His income doubled. Yet no matter how busy he became, 2 days of the week belonged to Tamawa. Thursdays and Sundays. He would pick him up from Amara's place, take him to the park, buy him ice cream, or let him scribble with crayons at the shop while he worked. Every hug, every laugh reminded him why he endured. Amara without him. At first, Amara didn't mind his absence. She even felt lighter. No arguments, no sulking looks, no need to explain herself. She told herself she was better off without a man who couldn't match her pace. For a few weeks, she almost enjoyed it. But slowly, reality pressed in. Balancing her demanding job with raising Tamawa alone proved far heavier than she'd imagined. Some nights she returned home to find him asleep on the couch, still in his school uniform, homework untouched, his small body curled in loneliness. Other mornings, she was so tired she hurried him off to school without breakfast, muttering, "I'll do better tomorrow." But tomorrow always slipped away. The guilt gnawed at her, sharp and unrelenting. The plan for a maid. One evening, as she sat at the dining table staring at Tamawa's untouched homework, frustration boiled inside her. He needed more than she was giving. She sighed, her head in her hands. "I can't keep this up alone." The thought formed quietly. She needed help. Not just a cleaner, but someone who could care for Tamawa, guide him with homework, ensure he ate, bathed, and slept properly. The next time Sei came to drop him off, she brought it up. "I'm thinking of getting a maid," she said carefully. "Not just for the house, for Tamawa. Someone to help with schoolwork, meals, bedtime. I can't do everything alone." Sei frowned, considering. "If you're going to do that, Amara, please make sure it's someone trustworthy. I don't want any harm coming to my boy." She nodded quickly. "Of course. I'll be careful." The new maid. 2 weeks later, Amara found her. Her name was Zainab. Tall, with dark, thoughtful eyes and a quiet grace. She was in her mid-20s, polite, her words soft but clear. Amara didn't pry much into her past. Zainab kept her answers simple. She only said she wanted to start over, to work hard and earn a living. What Amara didn't know was that Zainab carried a history she never spoke of. Years ago, desperate and cornered, she had fallen into sleeping with men for money. It wasn't the life she wanted, but survival had left her no choice. Now she was determined to rebuild herself. Becoming a maid might not be glamorous, but it was honest work. When she stepped into Amara's apartment, she whispered to herself, "This is my chance. I won't waste it." A new routine. Zainab settled quickly. She rose before dawn, made Tamawa's breakfast, and walked him to school each morning. By the time Amara returned from work, dinner was ready, Tamawa's homework complete, and the apartment tidy. At first, Tamawa kept his distance, shy and cautious. But Zainab's patience melted his walls. She learned his favorite snacks, listened to his jokes, read his bedtime stories. Within weeks, he was running to the door to greet her when she returned from errands. Amara noticed the change. "You're doing a great job," she told Zainab one evening. "Tamawa really likes you." Zainab smiled, bowing her head slightly. He's a good boy. I just want to make things easier for you. But behind her eyes flickered a shadow of sadness, the echo of a past she refused to speak aloud. Amara's late nights. At first, Amara's outings were strictly professional, networking events, business dinners, work trips. But as the months passed, the quietness of her home grew heavier. Loneliness pressed into her chest at night. She missed laughter, missed warmth, missed being wanted. So when male colleagues and old admirers invited her out, to restaurants, lounges, private bars, she said yes. Some nights she laughed too loudly, drank too much, let hands linger longer than they should. She justified it easily. Zainab is with Tamawa. He's safe. Her nights stretched later and later, sometimes creeping past midnight. She would tiptoe into the house, careful not to wake anyone, the smell of perfume and wine still clinging to her dress. Tamawa's lonely nights. Tamawa, now old enough to notice, began to feel the absence deeply. Bedtime felt empty without his mother's kiss or her soft good night. One evening, after lying awake for an hour, he padded quietly out of his room, his small feet cold on the tiles. He knocked gently on Zainab's door. "Auntie Z, can I sleep here tonight?" Zainab opened, surprised, then softened at the sight of him. Small, barefoot, his eyes heavy with sleep. "Come in," she whispered. He climbed into her bed and curled close against her. She wrapped an arm around him instinctively, protective, almost maternal. Before long, his breathing evened out. A new habit. It happened again the next week. And the week after. Whenever Amara stayed out late, Tamawa sought comfort in Zainab's room. Sometimes they talked about cartoons, school, and the little worries in his mind. Other times, he simply wanted to be held until sleep claimed him. Zainab never refused him. She told herself she was just filling the gap, making sure he didn't feel alone. But deep inside, she wondered if she was crossing an invisible line. One Amara might not understand if she found out. A growing distance. Amara, meanwhile, didn't notice the slow shift. She still loved her son, still provided for him, but unknowingly, she was slipping out of his nighttime world. On the nights she was gone, Tamawa no longer looked for her voice or her arms. He looked for Zainab. And slowly, quietly, Zainab was becoming more than just the maid in his young eyes. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, the kind where the whole neighborhood seemed to move at a slower pace. The sun was high, its rays spilling through the curtains of Amara's house. The faint sound of a blender hummed from a neighbor's kitchen, and children's laughter drifted from down the street. When the knock came, it was sharp but familiar. Zainab, who had just finished tidying up the living room, wiped her hands on her wrapper and walked to the door. Opening it, she found Sei standing there, casual in a polo shirt and jeans, but with that fatherly eagerness in his eyes. Before she could even greet him, Tamawa came racing down the hallway, his small feet thudding against the tiles. "Daddy!" he shouted, throwing himself against Sei's legs with such force that Sei had to steady himself. Sei laughed, bending down to scoop him into his arms. "My guy, look at you," he said, kissing the boy's cheek. Tamawa clung to his neck before wriggling free and turning to Zainab. "Auntie Z, don't forget to keep my drawing safe. Okay? I left it on the table." His voice carried a seriousness far beyond his years, almost as if leaving that piece of paper behind meant leaving part of himself with her. Zainab crouched so her eyes met his. "I won't forget," she promised with a soft smile, adjusting the collar of his shirt like a mother would. "Now go and have fun with Daddy." For a moment, Sei didn't move. His eyes lingered, not on Tamawa, but on the way the boy's little hands had reached instinctively for Zainab's. How his gaze softened around her, how his smile seemed fuller in her presence. It wasn't casual. It wasn't small. It was the kind of bond that said, "This person feels like home to me." The question later that evening, after Tamawa's weekend visit, Sei brought him back and lingered longer than usual. He helped his son settle in, kissed him goodnight, and then waited in the sitting room until Amara returned. She arrived close to 9 p.m., heels clicking against the floor, a faint scent of perfume trailing her. She looked radiant, her hair freshly styled, Her lips painted a deep shade of red, but her expression carried impatience, as though she had only returned because she had to. "We need to talk," Say said as soon as she stepped inside. Amara exhaled loudly, setting her bag on the sofa with a thud. "About what, Say?"
I'm tired.
"I've noticed something," he began carefully. "Tamawa is very close to Zainab. Closer than I expected. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's different. Almost like he's more attached to her than—" Amara cut him off with a roll of her eyes. "Of course he is close to her. She spends more time with him than anyone else. That's why she's here. That's why I pay her." "That's not the point," Say pressed, his voice firm but calm. "A child doesn't need to complain for you to know something is missing. I'm his father. I can see it. He's holding on to her because you're hardly around." Amara's jaw tightened. "So what exactly do you want me to do? Quit my job? Sit at home like some housewife and twiddle my thumbs? You think providing for him doesn't matter? You think I don't care about him?" "I'm not saying that," Say said quietly, almost pleading. "I'm saying your presence matters more than you think. Don't let him grow up seeing someone else as the parent who was always there." But Amara wasn't in the mood for listening. She waved him off, heading towards her bedroom. "You're overreacting, Say. The boy is happy. Let's leave it at that." A silent warning. Say didn't argue further. He left the house that night, but unease sat heavily on his chest. As he drove home, his thoughts spiraled. He knew how fragile children's hearts were, how easily their loyalties could shift. The way Tamawa had looked at Zainab earlier in the day haunted him. That quiet, unspoken message that said, "This is the person who makes me feel safe." Say's hands tightened on the steering wheel. If Amara didn't change soon, her place in her son's heart might slip away, not with a loud explosion, but with a quiet drift, the kind that no one noticed until it was too late. Zainab's lonely nights. For Zainab, life inside Amara's house was steady, but steady didn't always mean fulfilling. The routine was simple: cook, clean, care for Tamawa, repeat. By day, she poured her energy into him, filling gaps Amara often left behind. But by night, when the house grew silent and the shadows stretched long across her walls, the loneliness settled in like a heavy blanket. She would lie on her bed, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan and the faint sounds of traffic far away. In those hours, memories crept back. Memories of a different life, a past she had buried deep. It wasn't just about sex. It was about touch, about being seen and wanted. In her old life, men's attention had been constant, sometimes for money, sometimes out of desire. But here she had cut that part of her off. She wanted a cleaner life. Still, her body didn't forget. Sometimes, the ache of loneliness gnawed at her so strongly she tossed and turned for hours, clutching her pillow as though it could give her the warmth she craved. Tamawa's nightly visits on some of those nights, just as Zainab was beginning to surrender to the restless silence. She would hear it, a soft knock at her door. When she opened it, there stood Tamawa, small and sleepy-eyed, his pillow clutched in both hands. His voice was always a whisper. "Auntie Z, can I sleep here?" Her heart softened every time. "Come on," she would sigh gently, moving aside to let him in. He would climb onto her bed, curling up close beside her as if she was his anchor. Sometimes he fell asleep within minutes, his small fingers clutching her arm. Other times he would whisper stories about his day at school, about missing the times when his parents were together, about little fears he didn't voice to anyone else. Those nights left an ache in Zainab's chest, a mix of tenderness and sorrow. She never pushed him away. Instead, she held him, sang softly when he stirred, and reminded him he was safe. A stronger bond over the months. Their connection deepened in quiet, unnoticed ways. Zainab learned Tamawa's rhythms the way only someone deeply present could. She knew he liked his cereal slightly crunchy, not soggy. She knew how to tell when he was too tired to talk, or when he needed just 5 more minutes of bedtime stories before sleep would claim him. When nightmares startled him awake, it was Zainab who rushed to his side. When he scored a small victory at school, It was Zainab who clapped the loudest from the sidelines. She wasn't trying to replace anyone, but she was there. And in a child's world, presence mattered more than anything. Amara noticed the closeness, but it never alarmed her. If anything, it gave her relief. That's why I hired her, she told herself. So I can live my life without worry. And live her life she did. Weekends became filled with lounges, dinners, late-night hangouts. Men complimented her, bought her drinks, made her laugh in ways she hadn't laughed in years. She told herself she was chasing happiness, the kind she had lost long ago when responsibilities closed in too fast. Sometimes, she didn't come home for 2 or 3 days. Calls to check on Tamawa became rare. Zainab was reliable, trustworthy. That was enough. But something subtle shifted in Tamawa. The excitement that used to light up his face when Amara returned slowly dimmed. One evening, when she walked through the door, smiling and opening her arms wide for a hug, he simply nodded and returned to his toys. The first time, Amara laughed it off. The second time, she frowned. By the third time, she stopped opening her arms at all. Zainab noticed too, but she said nothing. Instead, she carried on, filling the spaces Amara left empty. For Tamawa, her presence was a steady heartbeat, while his mother's became something fleeting, like wind passing through the house. The conflict inside her still. As Zainab held him on those long nights, another conflict brewed quietly inside her. She was nurturing, protective, maternal with him. Yet when the house was silent again, when Tamawa drifted off into dreams, her own body reminded her of the emptiness she had been suppressing. She longed for touch, for intimacy, but not the kind she had once sold. She wanted to feel wanted, truly wanted. And yet, she vowed never to let that part of her life intrude here. Not now. Not with this boy who trusted her completely. So she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, fighting the restless stirrings inside her body. Every night became a quiet battle between who she had been, who she wanted to be, and who she was forced to be in this house. One evening, lying in the dark with her thoughts spinning, she decided she needed some kind of release. Something to quiet the ache and help her sleep. She started using her fingers gradually to look for the spot. She found it and was touching herself. Then she reached orgasm. Even at that, she wanted more. It was way different from the one you do with someone. The feeling was different. She just wanted a man to be on top of her and take charge like always. So one faithful day, as she was bathing Tamawa, his manhood was standing hard. It was way bigger than his age. She was spending more time touching it. Tamawa was calm. She wanted that, but she can't say. After dressing him up for school and dropping him in bus stop, she went straight home to masturbate with the picture of it still in her head. That night she was still doing it. She didn't hear Tamawa knocking countless times, because she was close. Then he entered. He was shocked what he saw. He saw her fingering herself faster and moaning loudly. When Zainab heard some footsteps close to her, she froze. Lo and behold, it was Tamawa, watching her. She couldn't explain. She stopped and asked him to come. He claimed the bed. She took his fingers and tell him not to tell his mother. He nodded. She directed him on using his fingers. In no time, she carried him on top of her. Directed him manhood inside her for penetration. She felt the difference. She started moving him up and down. Innocent Tamawa never knew what it was. But he liked it. He was just 4 years old. Then Zainab's legs were vibrating. She reached the peak and then relaxed. It continued like that for months, sometimes morning and night. In the morning when bathing him, she would play with his manhood to get hard, and then get to work. And then at night when he feels lonely. He was no longer coming to Zainab's room because he was lonely. It became a pattern, which his mum never saw. Rather, when she discovered, it was already too late. Tamawa turned 6. The morning of Tamawa's 6th birthday dawned with a gentle glow of sunlight spilling into the house. For most people, birthdays were a time of joy. But in this home, the excitement didn't come from his mother. It came from Zainab. She had been quietly preparing for weeks. On her modest salary, she couldn't afford anything extravagant. But she poured her heart into every detail. The night before, she stayed up late in the kitchen, carefully baking a small vanilla cake. She had no fancy tools, but she whipped the batter with patience, humming softly to herself, and sprinkled the cake with colorful sugar crystals she had bought at the corner shop. Beside the cake on the counter was a neatly folded bright red t-shirt with Champion boldly printed across the chest. She had saved little by little from her wages to buy it. To anyone else, it was just a shirt, but to her, it was a symbol, a way of saying, "You are special, you are loved, you matter." That morning, Tamawa's laughter echoed down the hallway as he ran around barefoot, thrilled by the whispers of his birthday. His little face shone with innocence, his gap-toothed smile lighting up the room. Then came a loud knock on the door. When Zainab opened it, there was Sei, standing tall with a grin, holding a bunch of colorful balloons in one hand and a neatly wrapped present in the other. "Happy birthday, champ!" Sei beamed, bending down to scoop Tamawa into his arms. The boy squealed with delight, hugging his father tightly, as if the world had given him the best gift already. Sei spent the whole day with his son. They went to the park, where Tamawa chased pigeons and played on the swings until his laughter blended with the breeze. Later, they sat at his favorite eatery, sharing plates of steaming jollof rice and crispy fried chicken. They laughed, talked, and created memories that Tamawa would carry for a long time. For Sei, it was a reminder that no matter how broken things were between him and Amara, his bond with his son was still whole. Amara's absence by evening, Sei brought Tamawa back home. The boy expected to find his mother waiting with open arms, maybe with another cake or a surprise gift. He entered the house eagerly, scanning the living room. But there was no one. Only Zainab was there, folding laundry in the corner. "Where's Mummy?" Tamawa asked, his small voice hopeful. Zainab paused, her heart tightening. She forced a smile and crouched down to meet his eyes. "She'll be back soon," she said softly, though she had no idea when Amara would actually return. The truth was harsher. Amara had been out all day. She had gone to meet a male friend, lost in the excitement of attention and company. Somewhere between dinner and laughter, she had completely forgotten the importance of the day. Her son's birthday was an afterthought, something she would only remember when it was too late. Zainab couldn't bear the sight of Tamawa's hopeful eyes dimming. She refused to let him go to bed disappointed. She went into the kitchen, pulled out the small cake she had baked, and carefully stuck 6 tiny candles on top. Lighting them, she called Tamawa in. "Come, birthday boy," she said, her voice bright, even though her heart was heavy. Tamawa's face lit up as soon as he saw the glowing cake. His eyes widened in pure wonder. "Make a wish," Zainab whispered, smiling at him. The little boy clasped his hands together, shut his eyes tightly, and whispered something only the heavens could hear. Then he blew out the candles with one long puff, laughing when one stubborn flame flickered back to life before finally dying out. They sang "Happy Birthday" together, their voices blending in a warm harmony that filled the kitchen. They shared slices of cake, laughing as Tamawa smeared a bit of frosting on his nose. For a while, the absence of his mother didn't matter. In that small moment, love was enough. When the cake was gone, Zainab handed him a small gift wrapped in plain paper, the toy car she had bought from a roadside stall. It wasn't expensive, but when Tamawa unwrapped it, his face broke into the widest grin. He hugged it tightly, then threw his arms around her. "Thank you, Auntie Zainab," he said, his voice bursting with genuine joy. And in that hug, Zainab felt something stir inside her, a mix of tenderness and responsibility. She was more than just a housemaid. She was becoming the anchor of this little boy's happiness. It was almost midnight when Amara finally returned. The door creaked open, and she walked in still dressed from her outing. Heels clicking against the tiles, makeup smudged slightly, the faint scent of wine and expensive perfume lingering around her. She glanced at Tamawa, who was sitting beside Zainab, still clutching his toy car. For a second, guilt flickered in her eyes, but she masked it quickly. "Oh, today was your birthday, right?" she said awkwardly, rummaging in her purse for her phone. "Sorry, baby, Mummy's been so busy. I'll get you something nice tomorrow." The boy just nodded quietly. He didn't rush to her, didn't leap into her arms. He held his new toy closer, choosing instead to remain by Zainab's side. That moment pierced Zainab deeply. She realized she wasn't just filling in for Amara. She was stepping into a role Amara was carelessly abandoning. Later that night, after the little celebration, Tamawa grew drowsy. He yawned, rubbed his eyes, and looked up at Zainab. "Auntie Zainab, can I sleep here tonight?" he asked softly, almost afraid she might say no. Zainab hesitated for a moment, knowing Amara might not approve. But when she saw the way he clutched his toy car to his chest, his small frame leaning against her with trust, she couldn't bring herself to refuse. "All right," she said gently, pulling back the sheets. The boy climbed into her bed, curling up close to her. He started touching her boobs. He knew that was how Zainab liked to be touched. Zainab gave him special that night. She brought out his manhood, massaging it for minutes, then turned him over. She started sucking his manhood. It hasn't been done to him before. He liked it. After some minutes, she asked him to come and suck her own too. He understood what she was talking about. When he was down there, she held his head, saying, "Yes, yes." Her legs started shaking after some minutes. Then she messed up little Tommy's face with fluid and let him penetrate as always. That night, they both enjoyed it like never before. When she was done, she wrapped her hands around him, kissing his forehead, reminding him not to tell his mum. Within minutes, his breathing slowed into the steady rhythm of sleep. Zainab lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her heart ached for Tamawa, for the emptiness Amara left behind, and for the silent weight of loneliness she herself carried. That night, she understood something. She was no longer just a maid. She was the safe place this child ran to, the steady hand he reached for when his world felt unsteady. And as she stroked his hair gently, she wondered how long this fragile balance could last. A boy finding comfort in her arms, while the woman who gave him life drifted further away. Zainab's secret started quietly. First, she realized her monthly flow hadn't come. Maybe it's stress, she told herself. Working long hours, running after Tamawa, staying awake late into the night, it could mess with her cycle. She brushed it aside. The second month, she noticed again. Still no flow. This time she panicked for a day, but then pushed it out of her mind. Maybe it will come. Maybe it's just late. But when the third month rolled in and nothing happened, she couldn't lie to herself anymore. Her body felt different, heavier, more sensitive. She bought a pregnancy test kit and locked herself in the bathroom one evening while Amara was out. Her hands trembled as she waited. When the result appeared, 2 bold red lines stared back at her. Positive. Her knees buckled. She sat on the cold tiles, tears stinging her eyes. "No, no, no, no," she whispered. An impossible choice. Zainab knew what this meant. She thought of the man responsible. There was no one she is having sex with except for Tamawa. She asked herself, is it that he has started releasing semen? She thought he was still very young. But it has happened already. He wasn't really sure of the results. She went to a small clinic the next day, hoping it wasn't too late to fix things. But after the scan, the nurse shook her head. "You're already 3 months gone. An abortion at this stage is very risky. I won't advise it." Zainab left the clinic broken, clutching the piece of paper that confirmed what she already knew. She was carrying a child, keeping silent. That night, when she stepped into Amara's house again, she forced her lips into a smile. Tamawa ran to her happily, wrapping his little arms around her waist. She bent down, hugging him back, blinking quickly to hide the tears that threatened to spill. To him, everything was normal. But inside her chest, her heart pounded so violently she feared it would give her away. How can I tell Amara? The thought gnawed at her. Amara would not only throw her out. She might call the police, accuse her of ruining her son, brand her as a monster. And then what? She would be alone, jobless, pregnant, and hunted. The fear was too much to bear. So, lying awake beside Tamawa that night, her hand instinctively covering her small but growing bump, she made the only decision she thought she could. She would keep quiet. She would protect her secret. She would keep the child, no matter what it cost her. For now it was her burden alone. Days passed, then weeks. Zainab threw herself into housework with a new kind of desperation. She washed, cooked, and dressed Tamawa for school. She stayed up until Amara returned late at night, pretending all was well. But her body was not cooperating. The nausea came in the mornings, twisting her stomach until she could barely keep food down. Her clothes, once loose, now hugged her waist a little too tightly. She moved slower, tired more quickly. Amara noticed. A mother knows. She had once carried life inside her own body. She understood the subtle changes no woman could hide. One quiet afternoon, with Tamawa asleep in his room, Amara finally acted on her suspicion. She called Zainab into the dining room. The air was heavy, and the ticking of the wall clock seemed louder than usual. "Zainab," she said softly, motioning to the chair opposite her. "Sit." Zainab sat, her heart slamming in her chest. Her palms sweated, and she avoided Amara's piercing gaze. "How many weeks late are you?" Amara asked suddenly, her tone low but cutting. Zainab's lips parted, but no sound came. She stared at the table, frozen. "And who?" Amara continued, her voice steady though her eyes were sharp as blades. "Is responsible for this pregnancy?" The silence that followed was unbearable. Zainab's eyes blurred as tears filled them. Her chest rose and fell quickly, and then her shoulders began to shake. She couldn't bring herself to answer. Her tears became her confession. Amara leaned back slowly, her chest rising and falling in restrained anger. "So it's true," she whispered almost to herself. "I thought I was imagining things, but it's true." Zainab sobbed harder, clutching the edge of her apron, her face crumpling. The secret she had fought so hard to keep had finally slipped through her trembling hands. Amara's face was unreadable, caught between fury and disbelief. Zainab wiped her tears with the edge of her scarf and raised her swollen eyes. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. "Madam, if I tell you the truth, will you promise not to send me away?" Amara blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" "Please," Zainab begged, leaning forward, her voice desperate. "Promise me. Just promise you won't chase me out. I have nowhere else to go. I have no one else, and this baby." Her voice cracked, a sob escaping. "This baby needs me alive. Please, madam, I beg you." Amara's chest tightened. Her instincts screamed that she was about to hear something she wasn't ready for, something that would tear her life apart. But she could see the desperation in the girl's eyes. After a long pause, she said slowly, "Fine, I won't send you away, but you must tell me the truth. Every word." Zainab closed her eyes, breathing shakily, then whispered the words she had dreaded to say. It's Tamawa." The earth stood still. Amara's head snapped up. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. What did you just say?" Zainab's tears spilled anew as she wrapped her arms around her stomach. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear I didn't. It started with him coming into my room at night when you weren't around. He said he was lonely. I only wanted to comfort him. But it went too far. Couldn't stop it. And now—" She collapsed into sobs, covering her face. Amara staggered back, as though struck by an unseen force. She grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. "My son!" Her voice cracked, hoarse and trembling. "Zainab, my only son?" Her voice rose, echoing like thunder through the house. "Do you even know what you're saying? Do you know what you've done?" Zainab fell to her knees on the tiled floor, crying so hard her words came out broken. "I know, madam. I know. Please, don't throw me out. I beg you. I didn't plan it. I swear I didn't." Amara's mind swirled with rage, shame, and confusion. She wanted to scream until her throat tore. She wanted to strike Zainab, to erase everything she had just heard. But no amount of rage could undo the truth. Her son's name had been spoken, and nothing could erase it. The question. Alone in her bedroom later, Amara paced like a caged animal. The walls seemed to close in around her. No, it can't be true. Tamawa is just a boy. He doesn't even understand these things. Zainab must be lying, trying to hide her shame. But then, memories stabbed her. The nights she returned home late and found Tamawa curled up in Zainab's bed. The way he clung to her, the strange bond they had built. Fear choked her. What if it was true? She called Tamawa into her room. He entered cheerfully, clutching his small football, innocence still painted across his face. "Mummy, you called me?" Amara's throat tightened. She pulled him to sit beside her. "Tamawa, tell me the truth. Did Zainab ever ask you to keep secrets from me?" He lowered his eyes, fiddling with his ball. Silence stretched. Then softly he nodded. "Yes, Mummy." Her blood ran cold. "What do you mean, yes?" she demanded. "I like her," he said simply. Her heart nearly stopped. "Shut up. What do you mean liking her?" Tamawa's voice was soft, almost innocent. "You're not always here. But she is. She takes care of me. She plays with me. At night I go to her room and we do things. She told me not to tell you." Amara's hands flew to her mouth. Tears burned her eyes. "No, no, no. Stop talking," she screamed, shaking her head violently. But her son looked at her with sincerity. "It's true, Mummy. We do it every day." "Enough!" Amara cried, her voice shattering. She clutched her chest, gasping for air. Her little boy, her baby, defiled. "Go to your room now," she barked, trembling. Startled, Tamawa ran off. Amara collapsed to the floor, her sobs racking through her body. The truth had been spoken, and it had shattered everything. The night of regret. Amara locked herself in her bedroom, trembling from head to toe. Tears streamed uncontrollably as her voice broke in whispers. "This is my fault. All of it. Sei warned me. He told me to pay more attention to my son. But I was too busy chasing happiness, chasing men, chasing emptiness." Her sobs deepened, her chest aching. What kind of mother am I? That night, she could not bear to leave Tamawa alone. She went into his room, lifted him into her arms, and carried him back to her bed. She held him close, so close she could feel his small heartbeat against her chest. She kissed his forehead over and over, tears soaking his hair. He fell asleep quickly, oblivious to the weight of his confession. But Amara lay awake, watching his innocent face through the blur of her tears. "I failed you, my son," she whispered into the night. "But never again, never again." The morning after, Amara's eyes were swollen from a night without sleep. Her hands shook as she picked up her phone and dialed the one person she could trust. "Say, can you come over? Please, it's urgent." An hour later, he was in her living room, concern written all over his face. "Amara, what's wrong? You sound broken." Her lips trembled as she gestured for him to sit. And then, through tears, she told him everything. Zainab's pregnancy, the confrontation, and Tamawa's chilling words. Sei's face went pale. His eyes widened in horror as the truth sank in. He buried his face in his hands, whispering, "My God, Tamawa, our little boy." Amara clutched his arm desperately, crying, "It's my fault, Sei. I wasn't there for him. I left him with a stranger. I abandoned my child. And now look." Sei sprang to his feet, pacing with his hands on his head. "No, no, no, no. This can't be real. This can't be happening." He turned to her, his voice breaking. "Amara, I don't want Zainab to just walk away. If she leaves, she goes free. She destroyed our son's innocence. She destroyed." His words broke off into silence. Amara nodded through her sobs. "I know. But what do we do? The police? The world? How do we even begin to fix Tamawa?" The room fell quiet, both of them crushed under the weight of grief, shame, anger, and a single haunting truth. Their world would never be the same again. A single mother employed a maid to assist her, because she was too busy with work. But the maid used the little boy to satisfy her sexual urge. Let's see what happened after she discovered her maid was pregnant. The confrontation. Amara sat tensely on the sofa, her legs crossed but restless. Her fingers laced together so tightly that the veins on the back of her hands stood out. Every breath she took came shallow, uneven. The silence in the living room was unbearable. A silence broken only by the ticking of the wall clock and the muffled hum of the ceiling fan. Sei sat beside her, but not close enough. His jaw was tight. His chest rose and fell heavily, and though he was trying to remain composed, his eyes burned with the kind of anger that came from betrayal. "Call her," he said, his voice low but sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. Amara hesitated, her throat dry. She unlocked her phone with trembling hands and dialed Zainab's number. "Come to the sitting room," she said curtly. Her voice betrayed nothing, but her eyes flickered nervously. Minutes later, Zainab appeared in the doorway, wiping her damp palms on her apron. Her face was pale, lips quivering, eyes darting from Amara to Sei. She could already feel the storm she was about to walk into. Sei rose slowly to his feet, his height towering over her trembling frame. He didn't shout at first. His voice was low, almost trembling with restrained rage. "Zainab, what have you done?" His words carried weight, slicing through the room. "You betrayed this family. You betrayed that boy's innocence. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Zainab's legs buckled beneath her. She dropped to her knees on the tiled floor, her tears rushing freely as she clasped her hands together like a beggar.
I'm sorry.
"I never meant. I was lonely, and he—" "Don't!" Sei thundered suddenly, his voice echoing so loudly that Amara flinched. His face was red now, his anger no longer contained. "Don't you dare try to justify it. He is a child. A child." Zainab sobbed harder, bowing her head to the floor. The sound of her weeping filled the room. For a long while silence hung thick. The only sounds were her sobs and the hollow beat of the clock on the wall. Sei paced back and forth, running a hand across his face. Then he stopped, turned sharply, and asked with a voice that came out like ice, "How many months gone are you?" Zainab's voice shook. 5 months and 2 weeks. Sei's knees almost gave way. He closed his eyes and exhaled heavily, his chest heaving. "So it's too late to terminate it," he muttered bitterly under his breath. His fists clenched at his side, the veins in his arms rising as though his whole body was ready to erupt. He turned away, pacing again, then stopped abruptly and faced her. "I can't live under the same roof as you anymore. I can't. Not after this. Please," Zainab whispered through her sobs, clutching at his feet. "Please, I beg you. Let me keep this child. I will take care of it. I will not trouble anyone. Just let me have a chance to make things right." Neither Sei nor Amara answered. The air was suffocating, thick with disappointment and grief. Amara's eyes were fixed on the floor, her expression unreadable, while Sei stood like a stone, heavy, wounded, but resolute. The days that followed were tense and unbearable. The house felt heavier than ever. Even Tamawa, though he didn't fully understand, could sense something was broken. He stayed mostly glued to Amara's side, avoiding Zainab, who lingered in the background like a ghost. Sei spent nights pacing the sitting room long after everyone had gone to bed. Sometimes Amara joined him, sitting silently, the distance between them wider than it had ever been. Finally, after days of silence, he spoke to her one evening. "We can't throw her out on the streets just like that," he said quietly, rubbing his forehead. "But she can't remain here, not with him around. It's not safe. It's not healthy." Amara nodded stiffly, though her eyes carried no sympathy. She had grown cold, her heart hardened against Zainab. Within the week, Sei began searching for a small apartment. Something modest, away from the neighborhood, far enough to give everyone breathing space. He decided he would pay the rent for the first year, furnish it with essentials, and then leave Zainab to build her own life. At the same time, Sei enrolled Tamawa for therapy. The first sessions were agonizing. The boy sat curled in his chair, lips sealed, refusing to open up. But with patience, the child therapist managed to draw him out little by little. Slowly, Tamawa began to talk about the things he had seen and felt. Every word was like a dagger to Sei's heart. Amara, though outwardly strong, wept silently every time they returned from the sessions. She blamed herself over and over, whispering prayers in the dark. Sei, though deeply wounded, bore his pain like a shield. Trying to remain strong for the son he wasn't sure how to protect anymore. The family had been scarred, and nothing would ever be the same again. The separation. 2 weeks later, Zainab's departure finally came. Her few belongings were packed neatly into 2 suitcases. Her belly had already begun to show, and her eyes were swollen from endless nights of crying. She avoided Tamawa's gaze as she walked past his room, afraid she might collapse if she saw him one last time. At the doorway, Amara stood with folded arms. Her expression was torn between anger and pity, but she said nothing. Sei handed Zainab the keys to the modest 1-bedroom flat he had secured for her. "This is your chance to build a new life. Don't waste it," he said sternly, though his voice trembled slightly at the edges. Zainab nodded, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. "Thank you for not throwing me away completely." And just like that, she left. The new routine. Zainab settled into her new home quietly. The apartment was simple: a single bedroom, a small sitting room with a second-hand sofa, and a kitchen with a gas cooker. It was not much, but it was hers. She busied herself with chores, cooking, cleaning, and preparing for the baby. But every so often, she would pause by the window, staring into the empty street, missing the sound of Tamawa's laughter. Back in Amara's house, life took on a strained routine. Sei and Amara visited Zainab occasionally, bringing food and baby supplies, but they never once let Tamawa accompany them. The boy noticed. At night, he would lie in bed, clutching his pillow, whispering Zainab's name into the darkness. He remembered the way she tucked him in, the warmth of her arms when his mother was gone, the stories she whispered to chase away his fears. Now she was gone, and the void was unbearable. "Why can't I go to Auntie Zainab's house?" he asked innocently one evening, his big eyes fixed on Amara. Amara froze, her throat tightening. She forced a weak smile. "Because she has her own baby to think about now, my son. It's better this way." Tamawa lowered his gaze, unsatisfied. He didn't argue. He just curled into his mother's arms. But the embrace no longer gave him the comfort it once did. The shocking meeting. It was a Saturday afternoon when Sei and Amara decided to stop by Zainab's apartment with some food items and baby clothes. The visit was meant to be brief, but when they walked into the small sitting room, they froze. Zainab wasn't alone. Sitting casually on the couch, sipping a bottle of malt, was a man Amara knew too well, a man she had hoped never to see again. Her heart slammed against her chest. Her palms went clammy. The walls of the tiny room seemed to close in on her. It was him, the man from the club, the one-night stand that had turned her life upside down 6 years ago. The man who disappeared the very next morning, never returning her calls. Their eyes met across the room, and for a few seconds, everything went silent. Zainab, oblivious to the storm brewing in Amara's chest, smiled warmly. "Oh, meet my cousin, Kunal. He just came into town and stopped by." Sei extended his hand politely. "You're welcome." Kunal shook his hand, but his eyes flickered briefly toward Amara. The look lasted barely a second, but it was enough to send chills down her spine. Sei noticed sudden stiffness. He turned to her. "Everything okay?" Amara forced a shaky nod, her lips tight. "Yes, I'm fine." But she wasn't. Neither was Kunal. The silence between them screamed of a secret neither wanted to acknowledge. After the visit on their way home, Amara was unusually quiet, staring out the car window as if the world outside could swallow her. Sei glanced at her several times. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked gently. "I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly, but Sei wasn't convinced. The next day, he went back to Zainab's apartment alone. He sat across from her, his eyes fixed firmly on her face. "Zainab," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Yesterday, I noticed something. The way Amara and your cousin looked at each other. They froze. Like there's history. What's going on?" Zainab shifted uncomfortably, biting her lip. She wanted to protect her cousin's confidence, but the weight of Sei's stare was crushing. Finally, she sighed. Kunal told me that he and Amara, they had a one-night stand. About 6 years ago. He said it was around the same month you and Amara were together too. Sei leaned back slowly, his chest tightening. His vision blurred for a moment as the words sank in. 6 years ago. The same month. The same time Tamawa was conceived. Pieces he had ignored all these years suddenly came together. Amara's initial uncertainty about her pregnancy. The hesitation in her voice when she first told him. The way she never gave him a straight answer when he asked if she was sure. His throat went dry. His heart thudded heavily in his chest. Then, he whispered, almost to himself, his voice cracking, "Is Tamawa truly my blood?" After leaving Zainab's apartment, Sei lay wide awake in his bed. The ceiling fan above spun in slow, lazy circles, humming with a steady rhythm, but it did nothing to calm the storm raging inside his chest. He tossed to one side, then the other. He sat up, rubbed his face, lay back down again. Sleep refused to come. Could it be true? Could Tamawa not be his? The thought itself was like a dagger twisting in his ribs. His mind refused to rest. It kept replaying old memories like a cruel film reel. He remembered the very first time he held Tamawa in his arms. A tiny, wrinkled baby swaddled in soft cloth, eyes shut tight, lips puckering as if sucking on invisible milk. He remembered staying awake for countless nights, pacing the room with the crying baby in his arms, rocking, humming, whispering lullabies just to keep him calm. He remembered the sacrifices, turning down outings with friends, saving every extra kobo, working long hours, because in his mind he was building a better life for his son. No matter what anyone said, Tamawa was his boy, his laughter, his smile, his very heartbeat. But the doubt was louder than his heartbeat now. It nagged, it whispered, it screamed. But is he really your blood? The next evening, the next day, Sei could hardly focus at work. He signed documents absent-mindedly, stared too long at his computer screen, and jumped whenever his phone buzzed. By evening, he made up his mind. He drove straight to Amara's place earlier than usual, parking outside for a long moment to gather his courage. When she opened the door, her brows lifted in surprise. "You're early. Everything okay?" "Yes," he lied smoothly, forcing a smile. "I came to pick Tamawa. I want to take him to the park. Just father and son time." Amara, already half-dressed for an evening outing, turned back to the mirror and adjusted her earrings. Her voice was casual, distracted. "That's good. He'll love it. Don't stay out too late." Minutes later, Sei held Tamawa's small hand, guiding him to the car. His smile looked steady, but his heart was racing, palms sweaty on the steering wheel. He drove past the neighborhood park, past the familiar ice cream shops, past everything the boy had been expecting. "Daddy, aren't we going to the park?" Tamawa asked, his big curious eyes blinking. "Yes, champ," Sei replied, voice tight. "We'll go soon. First, we just need to make a quick stop." That stop was at a private hospital on the edge of town. Inside, Sei explained quietly to the doctor, his voice barely above a whisper. The man in the white coat nodded knowingly, as if he had heard this kind of request too many times before. The swabs were taken, one from Tamawa's mouth, one from Sei's. Tamawa didn't suspect anything. To him, it was just another checkup. On the way back, Sei bought him ice cream to distract him. The boy licked the cone happily, swinging his legs. "Daddy, when will we go to the park?" he asked again, his voice innocent and expectant. Sei's throat tightened. He forced a smile, reaching over to pat his son's head. "Next time, champ. I promise." The results would take weeks, and Sei hated waiting. But he had no choice. When he got home, he folded the hospital receipt neatly and buried it inside a brown envelope, hiding it deep in the back of his drawer like a dirty secret. Each morning, he woke up pretending nothing was wrong. Each evening, he still visited Amara and Tamawa, carrying on as if life was normal. He laughed when Tamawa made his silly jokes. He nodded and smiled when Amara updated him on her latest outings. But inside, his mind was on fire. Does she know? Did Amara lie to me all this time? Or was she just as uncertain as I am now? But he didn't ask. Not yet. Until the truth came in black and white. He played his role perfectly. Father, visitor, provider. No one suspected a thing. Only when he lay down at night did the question return. Heavy and suffocating. Is Tamawa truly mine? Secret nights in the midst of all this turmoil. Sei found himself drawn more and more to Zainab. At first, it was harmless, or so he told himself. He checked in on her occasionally, making sure she was adjusting well in her new apartment, making sure she had everything she needed as her pregnancy advanced. But those visits grew more frequent. He began bringing groceries, baby clothes, little things she never asked for. Sometimes he sat with her on the couch, listening as she talked about her fears, her regrets, her dreams for the future. Other times, they shared long silences that somehow felt comforting. Zainab, who had once carried shame like a cloak, began to feel human again. Sei's attention, his kindness, his presence. These things made her smile in ways she thought she had lost forever. Amara noticed Sei's divided attention but dismissed it, believing he was only helping Zainab out of guilt. What she didn't know was that Sei had begun spending nights at Zainab's place, giving excuses about late meetings and urgent work calls. It happened one rainy evening. Thunder rumbling in the distance. Sei stayed over again. Zainab, heavily pregnant yet glowing, lay on the bed beside him. The only sound in the room was the soft tapping of rain against the window. She turned to him, eyes shining with unshed tears. Sei, I feel so lonely. Please, just hold me. He hesitated, his pulse quickening. Zainab, no, it's not right. You're pregnant, and... But before he could finish, a tear slipped down her cheek. I just want to feel wanted again. I don't want to be alone anymore. Something inside him broke. He reached out, wiped her tears, and pulled her close. At first, it was just comfort. Then comfort turned to kisses. Kisses turned to fire. And fire consumed them both. That night, what began as a need for warmth became a night of passion. Despite her pregnancy, Zainab's body responded with hunger. She surprised him with her energy, her eagerness. They gave in to each other again and again, 3 times before dawn. Each time, she whispered his name through tears, clinging to him as if afraid he would vanish. Each time, he lost a little more of the guilt he thought would hold him back. When morning came, she lay beside him, a soft glow on her face. For the first time in months, she whispered, I feel alive again. Sei stared at the ceiling, conflicted, but deep down, he couldn't deny that he, too, had found peace in her arms. After that night, everything changed. He told himself it was a mistake, that it shouldn't happen again. But his body betrayed him. His heart betrayed him. He couldn't forget the way Zainab looked at him, the way she gave herself without pride, without conditions. He began calling her every morning, every night. Sometimes just to ask how she was feeling, other times just to hear her voice. He missed her when he wasn't with her. Zainab, too, was transformed. The sadness that had once weighed her down seemed to lift. She smiled more. She hummed while cooking. Neighbors noticed her glow. Whenever Sei visited, she treated him with a tenderness that pierced his heart. Something Amara hadn't given him in years. Where Amara's words were sharp, Zainab's were gentle. Where Amara criticized, Zainab encouraged. With her, he felt peace. The confession one evening, after hours of arranging baby clothes and fixing little things around her apartment, they ended up in bed again. The air between them was heavy with unspoken truths. After their heated lovemaking, Zainab turned to him, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his chest. Her voice was soft but bold. Sei, I love sex. I really do. I can't lie about that. Sometimes I wish I could have it every day. It makes me feel alive. Sei froze, then laughed quietly, kissing her forehead. You're something else, Zainab. Finally, I've met someone who matches my energy. Her eyes widened, hopeful. You mean, you feel the same? Yes, he admitted, pulling her closer. With you, I don't have to hold back. You give me everything without making me feel guilty. I like that. Maybe too much. She blushed, shy but secretly thrilled. For the first time in her life, she felt not just wanted but truly valued. From that night onward, their bond deepened. It was no longer about obligation. Sei wanted to be there, and whenever he left, he missed her scent, her smile, her warmth. Meanwhile, Amara remained blind, chasing her own pleasures, unaware that the man she had taken for granted was slowly slipping into another woman's arms. The DNA truth then, one cool morning, Sei's phone buzzed. It was the hospital. "Sir," the voice said, "your DNA result is ready. You can come for collection." His heart skipped. For days, he had lived in restless anticipation. Now the truth was waiting in a sealed envelope. At the hospital, his palms were sweaty as he signed the papers. Sitting in his car, he tore the envelope open. His eyes scanned the page, his breath catching with every word. Paternity test result. Probability of paternity is 0%. Subject tested is not the biological father of the child. Sei's hands trembled. He pressed the paper against the steering wheel, his chest tightening until he could hardly breathe. Tears blurred his vision, but he didn't fight them. He broke down alone in his car. Years of sacrifice, loyalty, and silent endurance flashed before him like lightning. Tamawa was not his son. The first thought that stabbed through the fog of pain was bitter and sharp. Amara lied to me. She trapped me in a bond that was never mine. And the cruelest twist of fate? The true father was none other than Zainab's cousin, the very same man Sei had just met. The confrontation. Sei kept it bottled up for days. The DNA envelope burned in his mind like fire he couldn't quench. Every time Tamawa called him daddy, his chest tightened. Every time Amara smiled casually at him, guiltless, he felt his blood boil. He didn't tell her immediately. Instead, he walked around her like a shadow of himself. His voice was clipped, his smile strained. Amara noticed, but she dismissed it. She assumed it was just work pressure, maybe another contract stressing him. But Sei's silence wasn't work-related. It was betrayal eating him from within. Finally, one evening, he could no longer hold it in. He drove straight to her apartment, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. When Amara returned from her outing, her heels clicking against the tiled floor, her laughter still lingering from the conversation she had on the phone, she found him already seated in her living room. His shoulders hunched forward, his jaw clenched, and on the table before him was an envelope. She froze at the door. "Sei, what are you doing here?" He didn't answer. His eyes were hollow, piercing. The silence wrapped around the room like a noose. Amara dropped her purse on the couch, trying to sound calm though her chest tightened. "You're scaring me. What's going on? Why are you here looking like this?" When he spoke, his voice was low, but it carried a weight that silenced the air. "Why did you lie to me, Amara?" Her heart skipped. "Lie? What do you mean? Why?" He leaned forward, his hands pressing into his knees. "Did you make me believe Tamawa was my son?" Amara's world tilted. Her throat went dry instantly. "Sei, what are you talking about? Of course, Tamawa is yours. Stop it." His voice cracked like thunder as his fist slammed against the envelope. The sound made her flinch. "Don't you dare play games with me. I did a DNA test. He is not my son." The words sliced through her. Amara's mouth trembled. She took a shaky step forward, then back. No, Sei, it's not. It's not like that." Sei rose slowly, his eyes red, his voice breaking. "This boy, the boy I have loved, raised, sacrificed everything for, he is not mine. He belongs to that man. The one you had a one-night stand with. Zainab's cousin." Her knees buckled. She tried to move closer, but he stepped back as if her touch would poison him. Tears rushed down her face. "Sei, I swear, I didn't plan it. It was a mistake. I didn't even know who the father was at first. You were the one who stayed. You were the one who cared. I thought, maybe it wouldn't matter. It matters." His roar shook the room. He clutched the paper in his hand, waving it like a weapon. It matters because you stole my truth. You made me carry a weight that wasn't mine. Do you know what that does to me? To him. Amara fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Please, please don't leave me, Say. Don't take Tamawa away. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. But his chest was heaving, his face twisted with rage and grief. He had nothing left to give her. Say's exit. She clung to him, her tears soaking through his shirt, her nails digging into his arms as if holding him physically would erase the truth. But Say peeled her hands away one by one. Don't touch me, Amara. You destroyed everything. His words were colder than the slam of the door as he stormed out. Amara collapsed to the floor, wailing. The sound of the door shutting echoed in her ears like the end of everything she thought she had. At Zainab's apartment, Say drove straight to Zainab's place, his mind spinning. He didn't even knock properly, just pushed the door open with trembling hands. Zainab came out of the kitchen, her round belly leading the way, her eyes wide when she saw him. Say, what happened? You look... Oh my God, you've been crying. He dropped heavily into a chair, both hands gripping his head. His voice was raw. Amara lied to me. Tamawa, he's not mine. He belongs to your cousin. Zainab froze. What? She rushed to sit. Are you sure? Please, Say. Tell me you're not just assuming. I did a DNA test. I have the result. I confronted her tonight. She admitted it. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. My own cousin? How could this happen? She leaned back, shaking, staring at the ceiling. The air between them grew heavy with disbelief. Finally, she whispered, Then I'll tell him. He must know. He must take responsibility, even if it's hard. He can't run from it. Say looked at her, broken. I don't even know what to do anymore, Zainab. That boy, I love him. But now, everything feels like a lie. She reached out gently, her hand brushing against his trembling fingers. You've been his father in every way that matters. That doesn't disappear because of a test. Amara's night of tears. Back at home, Amara couldn't sleep. Her sobs filled the empty house. She clutched her pillow, the silence pressing in like a punishment. In the middle of the night, Tamawa stirred. He walked into her room, rubbing his eyes. Mummy, why are you crying? Quickly, she wiped her face. I'm not crying, baby. I'm fine. But her voice shook. The little boy climbed into her lap, resting his head on her chest. Amara hugged him tightly, rocking him as tears rolled silently again. One night, one mistake, and now this boy is the evidence of a choice she could never erase. The meeting. The next morning, Say called. His tone was lifeless. Come to Zainab's place. We need to talk. Her heart pounded. When she arrived, she found him seated with Zainab and her cousin. The air in the room was suffocating. Zainab's cousin cleared his throat, his shame evident. Amara, Say told me everything. If Tamawa is mine, then I will take responsibility. But, his voice dropped. I am married. I have children. I can't be fully present in his life. But I won't abandon him. Whatever he needs, I'll provide. Amara covered her face, tears spilling. Say leaned forward, his tone steady but cold. From now on, I will still be in Tamawa's life, but not as his father. When he's old enough, we'll tell him the truth. Together. Until then, he deserves stability. Her voice cracked. I understand. I brought this on myself. The silence afterward was heavy. It wasn't peace. It was an agreement carved out of pain. Weeks later, time crawled. Amara threw herself into Tamawa, but guilt ate her alive. Sei visited still, but his warmth was gone. The cousin sent money, but kept his distance. Meanwhile, Zainab's pregnancy advanced. One evening, after helping her settle in bed, Sei looked around her modest apartment and sighed. You can't stay here when the baby comes. I've gotten a bigger place. Move in. At least until things settle. Zainab frowned. Sei, I don't want to be a burden. You're not, he said quickly. His eyes softened. You need safety, Zainab. And I need to know you're okay. She smiled faintly, touched. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. The night of blood. They had been living in the new apartment for weeks. Their bond grew. Shared meals, quiet conversations, laughter that softened the walls. Sei was becoming her anchor. Then came that night. Sei was half asleep when he felt her stir. He turned to see her face pale, her hands trembling. She pulled the blanket aside. Blood stained the sheets. Sei? Her voice cracked, weak with fear. His heart stopped. Oh my God, Zainab! He jumped up, fumbling for his keys. Within seconds, he was carrying her to the car. She clutched her belly, crying softly, "Don't let anything happen to my baby. Please." His grip on the wheel tightened as he sped through the night. "You'll be fine. Promise. Just hold on." The city lights blurred, his heartbeat racing faster than the car. But inside, he wasn't sure who he was trying harder to save. Zainab, the unborn child, or himself from breaking completely. At the hospital, doctors rushed her into the emergency ward. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant, but to Sei, it reeked of dread. He paced back and forth like a madman, his palms clammy, sweat trickling down his back even though the hospital's air conditioner hummed steadily. His lips moved ceaselessly, whispering prayers he hadn't uttered in years. God, please don't take them from me. Please save them. Please. Every minute stretched into an eternity. The beeping of distant machines, the hurried footsteps of nurses, the muffled voices behind closed doors. It all pressed on him, each sound reminding him that life and death were wrestling behind those walls. At last, the double doors creaked open. A doctor stepped out, his face grim. Sei's heart dropped. "It's not yet her due date," the doctor said, his tone clipped but urgent. "But the bleeding is severe. We have no choice, we need to remove the baby now. Prepare yourself, sir." Sei's lips parted, but no sound came. His throat tightened like a rope had been knotted inside it. He wanted to argue, to scream, to demand another way, but the words died in his chest. All he could do was nod, helpless, desperate, terrified. Inside, the theater time lost its meaning. Seconds dragged like years. Sei stood glued to the hallway, ears straining for any clue of what was happening inside. Then, suddenly, the doors swung open again. Nurses rushed out, carrying a tiny form wrapped in white cloth. So fragile, so impossibly small, yet alive. Sei's eyes widened, his chest rising with a shaky breath. He followed them with trembling steps as they placed the baby in an incubator. The sight was overwhelming. Tiny fingers curled tightly, tiny chest heaving unevenly. Every flicker of movement felt like a miracle. But even in that miracle, fear lingered. "Where's Zainab? How is she?" he demanded, his voice sharp with desperation. "Calm down, sir. The doctors are still on her," one nurse muttered, not daring to meet his eyes. Sei turned back just in time to see his baby twitch weakly. And then, as if the fight had drained away, go frighteningly still. "No, no, 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 what's happening?" he shouted, lunging toward the incubator. His heart pounded against his ribs, frantic, wild. The doctors surrounded the incubator, their hands moving swiftly, their voices low and urgent. A hand grabbed Sei's arm, holding him back. He struggled, but the grip was firm. He could only watch, powerless, as moments stretched like knives slicing into his soul. Finally, one doctor turned to him, his eyes heavy with sorrow. "I'm sorry. The baby didn't survive." The words struck like a hammer. Sei's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, his palms covering his face. The sound that escaped him was raw, guttural, almost inhuman. He cried like a child, loud, broken, helpless. Moments later, a nurse guided him gently into another room. Zainab was awake, her face pale, her lips dry, her body weak. But her eyes searched the room frantically the moment she saw him. "Where's my baby?" she whispered, her voice breaking before the words were fully formed. Sei froze, his throat locked. How could he tell her? His silence stretched, but the tears that welled in his eyes betrayed him before his lips could move. Zainab's eyes widened, her lips trembling. "Don't tell me. Don't tell me." His faint nod was enough. Her cry pierced the air like glass shattering. She clutched her stomach, shaking her head violently. "No, no, my baby, my baby." The sound tore through Say's chest. He rushed to her side, pulling her into his arms. She buried her face against him, sobbing uncontrollably, her body trembling with grief. "I carried this child for months," she wailed. "Felt every kick, every movement, and now nothing?" Say's tears flowed freely. He stroked her hair, whispering broken words. "I'm sorry, Zainab. I'm so sorry." That night, the hospital felt colder than any place on earth. Zainab didn't sleep. Her eyes stared blankly at the space beside her bed, the space where her child should have been. Say stayed beside her, holding her hand tightly, as if his grip alone could keep her from slipping into despair. When she was discharged, Say personally carried her bags. He had already prepared a new apartment, quieter, warmer, safer, hoping it would be a fresh start. But Zainab moved slower now, weaker, her steps heavy with grief. Her once bright eyes seemed hollow, carrying an emptiness that no sunlight could fill. Say fussed over her gently, arranging her pillows, making her meals, reminding her to take her medications. Days blurred together. One afternoon, Amara visited. She entered with a solemn face, her eyes soft for once. She pulled Zainab into a hug. "I heard. I'm so sorry about the baby," she said, her voice low, almost sincere. "God knows best. Please take heart." Zainab gave a faint nod, forcing a quiet, "Thank you." But Amara's sharp eyes didn't miss the way Say hovered around, adjusting Zainab's seat, pouring her water, fussing over the smallest details. She noticed the tenderness in his every gesture, the quiet devotion in his eyes. When she was leaving, she asked Say to walk her out. The moment they stepped outside, her tone shifted. "So this is what you've reduced yourself to?" she sneered, folding her arms. "Out of all the women in this world, it's the housemaid you chose? No class, no standard. How shameless can you be?" Say said nothing, his lips pressed tight. "You think people won't talk? From boss to maid? Cheap. You disgust me, Say. Imagine living with her like a wife." Still, he remained silent, his silence louder than any defense. "Keep quiet then," she spat, "because you know I'm right. One day you'll regret this." She stormed off, her heels clacking like thunder. Say returned inside, smoothing his expression before Zainab could notice. He found her curled on the couch, her head resting weakly against the cushion. "Are you hungry?" he asked softly. She shook her head, but he still went into the kitchen to prepare something light. Every little act, cooking, cleaning, sitting by her bedside, was his silent vow to never let her feel abandoned. One evening, after tucking a blanket around her, Zainab caught his hand. Her eyes glistened. "Say, I don't know what I'd have done without you." His lips curved into a soft smile. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. "You're not alone, Zainab. You'll never be alone again." Her heart swelled. The man she once feared would discard her had become her strongest pillar. Slowly, she began to love him. Not just for his presence, but for his patience, his gentleness, his unwavering loyalty. New beginnings months rolled by. Healing was slow, but with Say's support, Zainab began to smile again. She laughed at his silly jokes, hummed softly while cooking with him, even dreamed of the future again. By the next year, their love had blossomed into something unshakable. So when Zainab discovered she was pregnant again, her joy overflowed. She broke the news to Say with trembling hands and teary eyes. His reaction was immediate. He swept her off her feet, tears brimming in his eyes. "This time," he whispered into her hair, "we're going to do it right. We'll raise this child together." Say had been plotting something special. He wanted to give her a memory that would wash away her old wounds, a proposal that would crown their journey with hope. One afternoon, While chatting with Amara about family matters, he casually mentioned, "I think I'm ready to marry Zainab." Amara froze, then burst into laughter. "You? Marry your former maid? A beg? Say, stop joking." She waved dismissively, thinking it was a silly tease. Say only smiled faintly, his silence hiding the truth. The surprise engagement weeks later, he organized a small dinner party under the guise of celebrating a work milestone. Zainab dressed simply, unaware of what awaited her. As the evening wound down, Say tapped his glass. His voice grew steady. "Life has given me many chances, but none compares to the chance of loving you, Zainab." The lights dimmed. Soft music floated in the air. Then, before she could process what was happening, he went down on one knee, holding out a sparkling ring. "Will you marry me?" Gasps filled the room. Zainab covered her mouth, tears streaming freely. She shook her head in disbelief before whispering, "Yes, yes, Say." Cheers erupted as he slipped the ring onto her finger. She clung to him, overwhelmed with gratitude and love. Wedding plans, the news spread quickly. Families were informed, dates picked, preparations made. Zainab, once the quiet girl in the shadows, was now a radiant bride-to-be. Together, she and Say chose venues, colors, outfits, and guest lists. Their joy was contagious. Everyone could see they truly cherished each other. Amara's downfall when Amara received the invitation. Her hands trembled. The golden letters, Say and Zainab, stabbed at her heart. She slumped on her couch, weeping bitterly. This was the man she once had, the man she lost through pride and carelessness. Now he was marrying the very woman she had mocked. Her own life was in shambles. Men came and went, using her, discarding her. None loved her. None stayed. Deep down, she knew why: her pride, her sharp tongue, her character. And now, the home she once dreamed of belonged to another woman. The wedding day, the hall glowed with joy. Say, resplendent in his cream agbada, couldn't take his eyes off Zainab as she walked down the aisle in her flowing white gown. A murmur of delight filled the hall when little Tamawa, smartly dressed in his tiny suit, carried the rings with a proud grin. Vows were exchanged, promises sealed. Tears fell freely among guests as Say kissed Zainab's hand and whispered, "Forever with you." Happily married life after the wedding was filled with laughter. Zainab gave birth to a healthy child, and their home rang with joy. Say adored her, and she cherished him deeply. Every day she thanked God for second chances. As for Amara, she lived with regret. Sometimes she saw their pictures online. Say smiling, Zainab glowing. She wept for what she had lost. But Zainab never looked back. She had survived shame, endured storms, and now she lived healed, loved, and fully cherished, married to the man of her dreams. Thanks for watching. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories.